贵宾，大家早，欢迎参加我们的演讲会。Good morning. My name is Karl Weaver. I am a Greater China, Asia, and now India wireless market specialist. Dedicated 20 years of my career to developing Asia Pacific markets. Spent 10 years of my career living, working in Taiwan. I've spent the next 10 years of my career in the Washington State area, helping three very well-known wireless and telecom companies sell into Asia Pacific, Greater China, and Indian markets. This morning's presentation will be the global smartphone revolution. The mobile digital dragon, I term China the mobile digital dragon, and now I'm going to term India the IT super tiger. Next, please. So this morning's agenda, we'll talk about the global smartphone revolution, the concept of converged devices. We'll talk about smartphones and their impact on the global mobile society. We'll also talk about the future mobile device features and trends going on in the world today. In part two, we'll talk about the mobile digital dragon, China and India, the IT super tiger. We'll talk about China first, and then on part three, we'll talk about India and the booming cell phone markets in India. Next. So what is the global smartphone revolution, you may be asking yourself? Well, the mobile device is already changing the basic way that people around the world communicate. United States, India, China. But the starting point of mobility is very, very different in each country. You know that kids in Hong Kong start using phones at the age of 6. And smartphones and converged devices. You may be asking, what is a converged device? I'll explain a little bit about that. But these are going to be demanded as our global mobile society looks to integrate tasks, functions, for voice and data and wireless communications. What does it mean? It means the mobile internet. Next. And sorry, I hope I'm not in everybody's way here. Let me move off to the side. So what is a wireless converged device, you may be asking? Well, and when is convergence successful? Basically, when the functions are more valuable combined than separated, well, that's when convergence is going to be successful for you. And it's also a space-saving situation. Nobody wants to carry all these mobile devices on their belt or in their pocket. Just too many. One is really all that you should have. And if there's little or no compromise, basically, you want something that's usable, that's very cost-effective, that fits in your pocket, essentially. And actually, if it makes things simpler and not more complex. If it makes things more complex, forget it, you're not going to use it. You're just going to say, well, that was a good Christmas present. I'm not going to use it. I don't understand it. Next. So basically, when you converge, when you take a cell phone, a PDA, you take a cell phone, a PDA, and a data messaging device, what do you have? You have a smartphone, essentially. So, but now converged devices, these aren't anything new. We've been using converged devices for an awful long time. So why would you be skeptical of a converged device? And I know maybe some of you people today say, well, I don't really think I want a converged device today. Well, actually, there were many design failures. And so to save yourself a lot of hard-earned cash on just any old converged device, you must do your research. Technology enablers. Well, you know, 5 years ago, they weren't there. They are there now with the advances of technology. If it makes for a complex user experience, as I said before, it's WYSIWYG nowadays. Who reads a manual anymore? So if there's no clear customer need, a perfect example of not much of a clear customer need in this country is the Sony mini disc. Fantastic product for the Japanese. They've been using it for a long time, over a decade. Who here, and I'm going to ask you to raise your hand, who here has a mini disc player? Okay, next. So now, mobile device convergence. Basically, that's when you take, there's a convergence going on. You have your basic vanilla flavor dumb phone, cell phone, getting a little bit more intelligent, by the way. And then you have your smartphone and your PDA device. Now, a PDA device is not a smartphone. A PDA device is a PDA device. It focuses on PIM, which means personal information management. Now, a smartphone really takes the convenience of a cell phone, which is in one hand, and the facility for PIM, personal information management, and it combines them all together and uses a unique operating system. It's usually Symbian, Microsoft, smartphone, or Pocket PC, Palm, or Linux. Linux is the new boy on the block. And basically, when you combine these together, using one hand, with a very, very nice looking color screen, and the ability to do multifunctional things. That's what a smartphone is. Next. So is there a need for smartphones? I think there is. Basically, here's what a smartphone value will allow you to do. Your unique ringtone that everybody is now downloading, your kids, your husband, your parents. It's interesting, but ringtones and ringback tones are becoming very, very popular. Wireless music download with MP3. Basically, MP3 is going right into the cell phone. And the major reason it's going into the cell phone now is because the storage has increased. We have micro hard disk drives now. It's similar to your iPad. Guess what? You can put your iPad in your phone now. And that's what's going on. That's another form of convergence. Interactive games, games online, the Nintendo N-Gage, maybe a little bit, that's for your kids. And then the streaming video for news, music, and sports. Can you imagine? I'm from New England originally, Massachusetts, Boston originally. Okay, I was fantastic to watch the Red Sox win the World Series. Now I have to wait, I hope not 100 years from now to watch it again, but it would be great if I could watch that on my cell phone. Wouldn't that be great? Now, there's something called well, there's basically a digital standard going on in the world today for TV, but also for downloading video clips. So in the future, you'll be able to watch TV on your cell phone, eventually. No, it'll only be about that big. So, and basically, it's an ease of use thing. And there's also a thing called interchangeable applications on the fly. We call that software-definable radios. That's a new concept, but remember this term, software-definable radios. That's where you have the ability to download any type of software onto your existing mobile device. And the device will be able to change operating system. It'll be able to change carriers and technology that you have. That's very interesting. Next. So now, convergent lifestyles influence convergent devices. So, okay, we have our work and our lifestyle and our play, but guess what? They're meshing all together right now. I asked, who here has a cell phone? So, well, all those hands should come up. Okay, not everybody. All right. So, you know, people at work and at home, they do a lot of telecommuting right now. It's getting very, very big. A lot of people have SOHOs, small office, home office. I have one. A lot of people have them. People do a lot of things at work, and they pay the bills sometimes. Of course, at lunch. Right? There's a social impact, though, of this convergent lifestyle. And so you might be asking, what is the social impact of this convergent lifestyle? Well, you might ask your spouse, who wants to hide your phone and turn it off and put it under the pillow so that you don't use it during personal time. So the next generation of mobile information workers, they're going to be adopting this new lifestyle. Next. So, okay, well, where is the market right now for smartphones? And where is the cellular market going? Well, any carrier in this country, in this world, will tell you that it's the youth market. They're going after the youth market for the consumer demand that's going on, usually 11 to 24-year-olds. And there's a bunch of new funky devices here. You might be asking yourself, why this? There's a digital divide here, people. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're over the age of 35, it's unlikely that you'll buy one of these devices because they're focused on the consumer youth market, 11 to 24-year-olds. And, but these are two different animals, the enterprise market and the consumer market. So these are two different, really kinds of animals here. Next. Now the enterprise market, again, the focus is on PIM, personal information management, and there are vertical and horizontal industries there. But email, calendar, scheduling, this is what business people need on their device. They don't need to play games. They need productive tools, business to business and business to consumer. Next. So these are just some of the newer smartphones that have come out on the market. Now these are essentially what you can buy in the United States market. These two aren't actually smartphones, but being an international businessman, I like to have a phone that is able to do CDMA in the United States. And when you roam across the globe, GSM, so you can take a SIM module and use the SIM module country for country. And when you're back in the United States, it reverts back to the CDMA network, Qualcomm technology, Qualcomm chipset, which, by the way, I think Freescale manufactures. Anyway, these are two, and these are basically newer smartphones out there in the market. Guess what? Look for every single month for new smartphones. It's coming out so fast. Next. Okay, well you can see there that SMS messaging, it may not be very big in the United States. We were essentially laggards just a few years ago. We didn't like that criticism, and now we're starting to use SMS messaging, but it really is for business applications, and some kids are starting to do it. In the international scene, Europe, they're using a lot of SMS messaging. SMS means short text messages. And China is basically in the Chinese New Year, which was about a 7-day period, every day 1 billion messages were sent SMS. In India is more of a voice-centric market, but SMS is growing very, very fast in India. And typical types of messaging services that you do with your cell phone: icons, ringtones, jokes, email service, online gaming, and online dating. Oh yes, it's actually big. And unfortunately, pornography, which is, well, it's commerce. Next. Now, camera phones. Basically, I remember in year 2002, when I was doing the internal antenna business, we were at Sony, at Sanyo, and this was in Gumi, south of Seoul. And basically, they said, well, I said, I'm a guest, I'm here to visit some clients. Well, where's your camera phone? They said. I said, I have a camera phone? Well, I've heard of these, and I've seen a few of them, but no, I don't have one. Basically, Samsung was one of the first companies to come out with a camera phone. And basically, camera phones have a security risk right now, but you're not going to stop camera phones. You can't, because if you can put a camera into a cell phone, guess what? I can probably put it into that can right there. So you're not going to stop the camera going into many types of devices and mobile devices. It's going to happen. But it's growing, and it's going to continue to grow. It generates a lot of revenue. Next. Now, this is the second part of my presentation. Basically, I termed China the mobile digital dragon. I've termed India the IT super tiger, although that doesn't quite look like a tiger. But in any event, I believe India will be blessed with the huge growth of the cell phone industry. And the cell phone industry is fueling China's entire economy. In fact, China's economy, the cell phone industry is the largest revenue-generating sector in China. Next. These are some of the wireless trends that we'll talk quickly about. I've talked a bit about them before. I kind of split my presentation up today, half India and half China. Next. Look at this, it's going right through the roof there. So in terms of subscribers, China has about 370 million subscribers, depending on how you count that. You count the module, or you count the phone. Some people buy more modules, more SIM modules, than they do phones. So, it is essentially the largest in the world, and it will continue to be that way. Predictions are 500 million subscribers by 2006. Next. Now, I want to talk really briefly about what I see in my 20-year career doing international business, especially Asia Pacific, as I call it the global integration strategy here, where Taiwan really does much of the R&D. In fact, Taiwan does at least 50% or more of the R&D of every cell phone in the world today. And I'll explain quickly a little bit more about that, but Taiwan is also the source of finances, and some factories which are financed in China. And China does much of the assembly and manufacturing, and also China wants to be the world's R&D center as well. It certainly is the world's manufacturing center nowadays. Next. So this is really essentially what's going on now. You have Shenzhen, which is a lot of the sun-dried industries and a lot of manufacturing that's going on in the textile industry, and some computer manufacturing, but really it's the Shanghai area. And for a combination of reasons, it's the Shanghai area which is fueling the cell phone revolution in China. And it basically starts here from Hangzhou, which is where UT Starcom. Ever hear of this company? Watch out for this company. This company is actually very interesting. Not watch out. It's grown tremendously, and it's used the China market to grow its markets, and it's also now in India. But basically, from Shanghai all the way to Nanjing, this is where you have the finest resources for handset manufacturing. You'll have efficient logistics, very efficient from Shanghai, a rich water supply, skilled university-educated engineers and professional labor. It's a magnet for international business, for production, R&D, and assembly. You've got Nokia there. You've got Motorola, has a production facility there, UT Starcom, Toshiba, Foxconn. Have you heard of Foxconn? That's basically Honghai in Chinese, and that's basically one of the top 5 manufacturers in the world today. They produce all kinds of things ODM. And BenQ, which is a Taiwanese company, Arima, Compel, Eastcom, Ningbo Bird. It's a funky term, right? It's a funky name, isn't it? Ningbo Bird. Bird. That's the largest cell phone manufacturer in China. And the contract manufacturers, Flextronics, Selectron, Celestica, these are all contract manufacturers which are American-based, but keep their offices in Asia and do all the manufacturing in, well, much of it now in Asia. Next. Now look at this. This is China's handset vendors who are starting to shift to smartphones. Why? Because the enterprise market in China they're demanding these functions and the need for doing many multiple things on a handset. And basically, Microsoft has been influencing the Taiwanese to basically design and manufacture and then sell back to the carriers in the United States. So you're going to see a smartphone with Sprint on it, and you're going to see the company's name who manufactured it, who might or might not be the actual manufacturer, and it's going to go into the consumer market. It's going to be much more tailored to the market. About 3-4 years ago, Nokia and Motorola basically didn't want to listen to the carriers in the United States, especially the CDMA carriers. And they said, well, you know, this is too much trouble. You know, you want your name on our cell phone? What's that all about? So basically, Nokia and Motorola lost a lot of share in the CDMA market. Who came in? I may ask you, who do you think came in and supplied Verizon and Sprint on the CDMA side of business? Samsung and LG. Now those are the 2nd largest and the 4th largest cell phone company in the world. Next. Now this is called China's 3G migration landscape. Basically, there's a world war, not a war, but it's essentially it's a very political thing in the world today with 3rd generation technologies. A lot of people want to talk about 4th generation technologies. Well, you know what? We still have to solve the issue of 3rd generation technologies. Right now you have GSM, which is a European protocol, and the migration is what we call WCDMA. You have CDMA, which is Qualcomm's derivative there, and the migration is what we call EVDV and EVDO, which is what Sprint and Verizon are using right now. So essentially, we're close to 3G right now in the United States. Some would say we're there. TD-SCDMA, which is technically China's homegrown 3G standard, but it really isn't. It really isn't. It was developed by Siemens, and then the IP is split between Datang and Siemens, and now a lot of other players have jumped into this TD-SCDMA because it's a very nationalistic thing with the Chinese government. Well, it's our home technology. So anytime China can eliminate foreign suppliers, they're going to do that. Expected deployment was supposed to be 2004. Guess what? Still hasn't happened. Probably will happen, most likely will happen in 2005. But China has basically recently said that, hey, we now realize that we need to do something about TD-SCDMA to make it a lot more usable in this very, very tightly regulated market for frequencies. So they have now announced that they will allow TD-SCDMA to operate not in this frequency here, but in 800 megahertz. It's brand new. It's very, very interesting. So I think it's great because this means more business for the world. Because somebody is going to supply the bits and pieces for this technology to happen. Next. So China, the Chinese New Year of 3G, I call it. This is TD-SCDMA. So who's going to get the licenses next year? Do you know that this is the most hotly contested thing in the world today? Why? Because this is the biggest market in the world. This is the billions and billions of dollars worth of investment going into China from all over the world as well, by the way. So China Mobile, which is China's largest carrier, will probably get WCDMA. China Unicom, which by the way has a GSM and a CDMA network, will get the CDMA 2000. This is essentially the Qualcomm technology. And who's going to get the new Chinese TD-SCDMA standard? The rumor is that China Netcom and China Telecom, which are just using fixed line wireless right now, similar to India using fixed line wireless. I'll talk a little bit about that further. Next. I want to talk very briefly about the new Chinese technology standards. You know, the Chinese are flexing their technological muscle around the world today. You can see it everywhere. They're trying to influence standards. You can see that with this new TD-SCDMA third generation mobile communication standard. Now, if you haven't heard about this, you will very soon. China is also trying to influence the new DVD standard, the emerging DVD standard. And this year, something called WAPI, Wired Authentication and Privacy Infrastructure. It's a security protocol that essentially the Chinese government tried to force on the world manufacturers of access points. Is China able to influence the world's markets? You better believe it. And the reason is because we've transferred for the past 30 years a lot of our core technologies into Asia, especially on the consumer electronics side. And the reason is because Asia is rising. As an area, it's rising. And actually protectionism, unfortunately, is rising there as well. Next. So now these are new powerful 3G cell phone handsets, and they suck a lot of energy. So if you're going to talk on your cell phone to somebody else, guess what? Take a lot of batteries with you, because technology is there to allow you to do video conferencing and video phone usage, but it does use a lot of power. You're not going to get too many hours. But basically, it's going to be the Taiwanese designing a lot of these and China doing the assembly. Here's Docomo and NEC cooperation. You've got, does anybody know what 3 is? What is 3? Has anybody ever heard of 3? Well, this is Hutchinson Whampoa. Has anybody ever heard of Hutchinson Whampoa? Hutchinson Whampoa is in Hong Kong. They also have an office in Bellevue, Washington State. They own a bunch of networks around the world. Orange, in the UK. Okay, well, as you can see, video phones are starting to hit the world stage, and they will continue to hit the world stage. But you need 3G technologies in order to really make that happen. So that's why 3G is coming. It's going to be very important. Next. This is really very quickly about the situation with the markets. You've got the CDMA side of the market. Motorola owns that, and Nokia owns the GSM side of the market in China. And there are a bunch of regional players. What's interesting to note is the local handset manufacturers in China, when you combine the total, are larger than the foreign handset manufacturers. And that will continue to grow. Continue to grow. Next. There are 37 handset manufacturers in China. Quite a lot. They won't all survive. There'll be a lot of consolidation. There's continued consolidation. And Huawei is producing CDMA handsets. Anybody ever heard of Huawei? They have an office in Texas. They are going to start hitting the world stage with their networking and their wireless infrastructure equipment very, very soon. In fact, they are very common and very popular now in the third world. In fact, they're in India. Next. The evolution of the handset, as I see it right now, the Western handset manufacturers, the Japanese, the Europeans, they go to Taiwan, they say, hey, can you design this handset for me under my bill of materials? They go to companies like HTC. Has anybody ever heard of HTC? If you go into T-Mobile, you buy a smartphone or a sophisticated cell phone, chances are it's made by HTC. BenQ is a big manufacturer. All of these companies in Taiwan, they do ODM work. They're not so concerned about their own brand right now, but they will one day. BenQ is concerned about that. But eventually, the Taiwanese have a lot of factories in China. So you can see that the phones are made in China, but in fact, it's a lot of Taiwanese invested factories. They own upwards of 50 to 60,000 factories in China. So this is what I call the evolution of the handset. Now, the handset is continuing to evolve. We're talking about India's influence on the handset. Next. This is very quickly, we don't have as much time to talk about the subtle art of doing business with the Chinese, but basically, shaping the Chinese personality, it's very difficult to do business in China. Chinese are top-notch negotiators. There are a lot of influences on China today. The cell phone is one of the major influences on China today, as well as we Americans, in many ways. Influencing China with our technology, by buying Chinese goods, we're influencing China. There's a circle of influence. This is basically where there's a continuity of things. The Chinese believe in a continuity of things, and they use that in order to communicate. It's basically Guanxi-based development. It's a system of relationships. It's a social bonding that occurs in China. Confucianism, as it applies in China today, it's very, very important. Nobody wants to stick up basically in a crowd in the Chinese hierarchical system, because if you do, you're going to get pounded down. That's simply the way it is. Face, 面子, that's very, very important to the Chinese. Never let a Chinese person lose face when you're in a business setting. You will not do business with that person if you do. Guanxi, guan means closed. Xitong, xi means system. What do we have here? We've got a closed system. So how do you take this closed system and open up the door to this closed system? You essentially have to understand and use and develop Guanxi. And it's not developed by going to 7-Eleven and buying it. You develop Guanxi over a period of time in a social setting. Essentially, for the Chinese, if they don't like you, they're not going to want to do business with you. It doesn't matter who you are. So developing Guanxi is very, very important, developing those relationships. For international business, if you do international business, it's pretty much a common that you must, and you have to do that. We Americans do things very nanosecond and Wall Street based, basically stockholder investments that can kill or drive a company and a program. That is not how to do international business successfully. Understanding China's legal environment and contract usage. Basically for the Chinese, when you sign a contract with the Chinese, guess what? You're just starting the ball game. You still have 9 years to go. You will continually have to negotiate with the Chinese, much to the chagrin of the company that has just signed the contract, much to the advantage of the Chinese, who essentially basically want to continue getting benefits from you. Essentially, that's the way it works. And you have to navigate China's socialist system of red tape. It's there. And basically, nobody wants to take responsibility for something, and it makes life very, very difficult to do business in China. It's a quid pro quo. And so the Chinese work on investment and incentive. And so when they see that, they're going to react. So it's much like everybody around the world. Next. This is some quick strategies for success in China. Develop an action plan. There are a lot of problems that need to be solved by Western companies. You need to define your markets, your blockers, and you have to adopt a lot of strategies and tactics. It's not, business 101. Doing business with China is a lot of flexibility involved here. How do you deal with corruption? Oh yes, you're going to find that in India and in China. How do you deal with that? How do you, as a corporation, see yourself and view yourself, in these foreign countries? It's very, very important to have a strategy and a mission. We've got a multi-channel selling strategy. These are basically some of the things I could talk about offline. It's just not enough time today. Next. These are some of the problems that I have experienced as a Westerner doing business with Asia, from the West, from Europe. Basically, Western companies are weak at developing long-term relationships due to inexperience of dealing with Asian cross-cultures. And they don't have a strong image that they're promoting. There's no dual identity corporate branding system. They think, well, we have to go to China. Can't we use our English name, Microsoft? Why can't we just use Microsoft? Doesn't everybody? No. No. If you want to go into an Asian character-based culture, Northeast Asia, Korean, Japanese, Chinese, you must have a localized branding. Essentially, that means your logo needs to be localized. As you're promoting your dual branding strategy of your English logo, Microsoft in the West is called Microsoft. What do they call Microsoft in China? Does anybody know? They call it Weider, which is what they call Microsoft in China.
What did it translate into?
Micro and soft, but it has a meaning. So you need to have your website localized in Asian languages, essentially Northeast Asian languages, Korean, Chinese, Japanese. And there really is a lack of stable, reputable local representation. And if you have that, it's not going to help you actually in China. It's going to hurt you. And when you set your pricing in China, try to use a lot of localized components and do assembly local, especially products and features that are focused for the Chinese market and not necessarily something that you sell off your US price list. Because you have to localize. What you're selling in America doesn't necessarily apply to India or China. Next. Now, let's talk quickly about India's wireless future. This is what I see for the future of India. I see that the United States cellular industry here, the cellular subscribers are about 150 million, which is quite large, second largest in the world. But in 5 years, India could equal that, quite possibly. I also see the average revenue per ARPU means average revenue per user, which is what carriers care about. Now, the ARPU is very low in India because the cost to buy handsets are very low in India. They used to have a huge problem with the gray market, which is cell phones coming in from the Silk Road, from China. China makes a lot of these cell phones, and they've kind of eliminated that gray market. And a lot of companies in the world now are saying, hey, you know, manufacturing in China, wow, you know what, there's a huge opportunity in India right now. So Nokia has actually announced that they will be manufacturing in 2005 in India, cell phones. Push to talk will enter India, probably via the Qualcomm technology. India's wireless market's much more advanced than Western people think. Much, much more advanced. In the year 2000, I traveled from top to bottom of India. And I saw cell phones, but in this almost 5-year time frame, the difference in the amount of users, it's unbelievable. It is really exploding. India has now the largest growth of cell phones in the world behind China. I think it's like 90% they grew this year in cell phone production and cell phone usage and purchasing. So it really, really is amazing what's going on there right now. But the one caveat, and also Indians sense that the cell phone is the 21st century tool. But the government needs to stay out of it, essentially. Laissez-faire. Let it be regulated by market forces and not the heavy hand of the government. Next. So now this is kind of a state-by-state breakdown. You know, India is an awfully large country. It's a very, very big country. It's very, very diverse. Many, many multiple languages, many multiple cultures, multicultural. It's very extremely multicultural. So I noticed that when I listen and talk to my Indian friends and notice how when they communicate with each other, they don't speak Hindi or some of the other dialects. They all speak English to each other. That's the only way that they're really going to know that they can communicate with each other 100%. Is that correct? Next. Now these are some of India's leading mobile operators. Reliance. Very interesting story with Reliance we'll talk about in a moment. But basically, Bharti. Bharti is the leading GSM vendor in India. Reliance is now the largest cell phone company or the largest operator in India right now. And some of the other players, Hutchinson is there, and a bunch of the other companies here. These are the major operators in India. Next. Now, India's wireless subscribers. So what's very interesting to note here is, look at the difference here. This is a tremendous increase from 2000, from 2003 to 2004 to 2005. And it will continue until 2006 and then kind of taper off a bit. But so the growth is actually going like this. Even though that's year by year, it's still a tremendous growth that's going on in India right now. So there are 45 million subscribers in India right now. I think there were less than 1 million 5 years ago when I went there for the first time. Next. So the cellular infrastructure in India is basically continuing to grow as base station usage. You have to put the base stations and set up your towers. That's how you get the cellular coverage. So it's one indicator of where and how the market is growing. And the predictions are that in 2005, GSM is they're going to put a lot of base stations in, and CDMA will also increase in 2005. But Ericsson really dominates the infrastructure. And Nokia basically has just won a contract for 250 million upgrade of Bharti's network. So you can see, it's essentially where that comes from. And Nokia has announced that it will manufacture cell phones in India. So Nokia is going to be manufacturing cell phones there. And Nokia owns at least 50% of the GSM market. That's for cell phones, not for infrastructure. Other companies that have been reported to set up or looking at setting up handset manufacturing, Samsung, LG, NEC, Panasonic, Kyocera, Sony. Gee, you think they have all gotten the point here that India is a place to manufacture? I think so. Next. So handsets, CDMA versus GSM. The replacement cycle is 24 to 36 months. Wow. It's only a little 2 years, 2 or 3 years. That's typical for America, right? Well, the handset replacement in places like China is 1 year, 1.5 years. So they're replacing handsets quite quickly. Nokia is the leading handset brand in China. If you ask anybody, it is Nokia. But Samsung, Motorola, LG, some of the other companies that are second, third here in the Indian market. And so Nokia, Samsung, Reliance, which is an OEM, they're probably putting their name on somehow. Handset coming from Taiwan, or from China, or from South Korea. And Sony, Ericsson, LG. Basically, you can see that right here, what's interesting to notice, in 2006 or 7 is when you're going to start to see 3G, which is WCDMA technology, on the GSM side, start to penetrate the Indian market, and then you can see that'll be, by 2009, pretty much all 3 technologies will be there. Taiwanese manufacturers, mainland Chinese manufacturers, they're all selling now in India. Okay, so smartphones, they've arrived in India. These are all the smartphones now selling into India. You might say, wow, these are pretty advanced, aren't they? Well, that is the situation. Indian companies, Indian nationals, Indian enterprises are now demanding enterprise applications. And so that's why you see this. Corporate email, PIM for executives, on the move, sales automation, data entry function. So basically the smartphone has now arrived in India. Next. Now what is driving a lot of this business? It's not just the enterprise market, it's actually a lot of consumer market. And then again, it's the youth market. The under 25-year-olds. This is what's driving a lot of business in India. And they're very savvy phone users now in India. And it is a status symbol, just like in China. And youth crowds are going for multicolored screens, speaker phones. Essentially what everybody's going for in the United States now, they're also going for India, as they are also going in China. So everyone's looking for advanced features and functions. And so it's the realization of the converged device. And everybody's going to want MP3 so they can play their songs and listen as they basically answer their call. The song may stop so they can answer the call, and the song will resume after the call is finished. So that's what a converged device allows you to do. Next. Now, Indians, they do prefer prepaid. It's a real prepaid market. It's very similar to China. So people between the ages of 15 and 19, they prefer prepaid postage. Postpaid is basically between the 25 to 29. They prefer the postpaid, but it's evenly split between the 20 to 24-year-olds. Does anybody know who this fellow is? Who is this fellow? He's famous. Isn't he here? I play baseball. He's on the cricket team. Everyone uses, a lot of people use prepaid in India. So basically, there are a lot of CDMA handsets, which are, Infocom, Reliance Infocom, which I'll talk about briefly, is really driving a lot of this, what we call wireless local loop mobile type technology in India, which is similar to Xiaoling Tong or little smart cell phones in China. Technology is a little bit different, but it's the same function. It's fixed wireless. Next. A little bit about what's going on in India right now, which is very interesting. Rosako told Yokto. I know my Indian is not very good, but basically, Bharti basically made a little bit of history this month by screening the world's first full-length Bollywood, not Hollywood, but Bollywood movie, Stop If You Can, on a mobile handset. So a movie, not on a mobile handset. It was analog, of course, but it was on a mobile handset. And it's actually, it might have been digital, but its video streaming service is now going to 6.76 million customers in India. And this is kind of interesting here where they have these rickshaws that drive around now, and you get use of a cell phone if you get into the rickshaw and use a cell phone, which is owned by the rickshaw. So it's an interesting way that corporations are trying to generate communications. It's very, very interesting. Next. CDMA plus WLLM. What is WLLM? It means fixed wireless. And for Reliance, it means money. It means a lot of money. Reliance Infocom is India's most interesting wireless player. They're pushing cellular services through a CDMA version of wireless local loop. What does this mean? It means they don't have to pay for licenses. So they're not paying for licenses. Really, they're paying a fraction of the cost to use and to create wireless. And the wireless is not roaming, though. You've got a huge country like India. GSM will allow you to roam all over India, like all over China, like all over America, all over the world. But fixed wireless won't let you do that. Fixed wireless is very, very low cost, but the handsets aren't that cheap. But the cost to make a call is very, very low cost, and it costs nothing to receive a call. We call that calling party pays, CPP. And Reliance is doing quite well. This fellow is quite famous in India. Reliance doesn't just do cell phones. They're a huge conglomerate in all kinds of industries. This is one of the brothers. The brothers are fighting though right now, or at least they're not happy with each other. But Reliance is the largest cell phone, or the largest operator now in India. And that has come from just 2 years it took for them to do that. That's amazing. So expect them to launch CDMA 2001 XRTT services. That's essentially what we're using, what Sprint is and Verizon is using here in the United States on 2.5G. Next. So this is a kind of a spectrum role. We've got some controversy in the wireless markets of India right now. It's very interesting. So basically, there's a rage between the GSM operators and the CDMA operators over the allocation of 3G technologies. Basically, it's going to be in the 1900 megahertz band, and that's got people concerned because the government says, well, the GSM operators said that CDMA services using 1900 would create interference. But wait a minute. What do we use in this country? We use 1900 megahertz for Sprint and Verizon. What does T-Mobile Singular use? They also use 1900. So we're using it here in the United States. They're calling it a controversy and it'll cause interference in India. I don't think so. Basically, you'll find very, very little equipment for GSM usage in the 1900 range. Or no equipment. That's why we have the situation. GSM operators, they oppose CDMA entry into 1900 megahertz band because that frequency is reserved for 3G internationally. Well, in 1900, that's what we're using. Europe and Asia use 1800 for GSM. We use 1900 for GSM. It really depends on the infrastructure equipment that's being put in place. It is extremely, extremely low cost to use CDMA services, which is this wireless local mobile technology, over the GSM providers in India. That is a real key point. So, sour grapes. Next. So is India an IT superpower? Is it? Does anybody want to answer that question? Basically, it's been called an IT superpower. Its annual sales, though, are about 2 million computers. It's about 1.5% of the world total. So with software piracy at about 7%, it's okay. It's 95 in China. So, will software piracy levels exceed? They're exceeding 70%. Do you see a lot of software or hardware made in India yet? I think you will, but not yet. Not yet. So I preface that by saying that no, India is not an IT superpower yet. However, it is an IT services provider. That's what it is. And it also has the opportunity to become the back office for the world. It essentially has that ability right now. Next. Now, this is coming to the conclusion of my entire professional career, which is the realization of the Pacific century. And basically, the Japanese kind of started this Asian economic miracle in the 60s and 70s with the emerging economies basically taking the backseat until Tokyo started to transfer some of this technology into the little tigers, the little dragons, Taiwan, Korea, Hong Kong, Singapore. And then now they started to develop these industries and are now very sophisticated and competing with the Japanese. And basically, in the mid-90s, China basically said, China and India in the mid-90s did something very, very different. But somewhat of the same conclusion. India was very, very closed for importation, especially electronic products in India. I was selling computer motherboards into India from Taiwan, and the only way you could ship any kind of computer equipment into India was completely knocked down, CKD, completely knocked down. And the Indian companies would take these and they learned by manufacturing, assembling and manufacturing, and shipping these goods to other parts of the world in exchange for hard currency. So in one respect, it was very good for India to develop and close their market up until about 1992 or 3. India was really closed. But India has now come on strong. It's a technology developer. It's a manufacturer. Software is quite well known, the prowess of Indian software around the world. But hardware is going to come on. And basically it was because India had closed their markets. Now China, on the other hand, got much of their technology through the overseas diaspora around the world, who went into China in the early 90s because Deng Xiaoping said, whether the mouse is black or white, it doesn't matter as long as it catches the cheese or something like that, the cat, is that what it is? As long as the cat's black and white, as long as it catches the mouse, that's really all that matters. So the Chinese, the overseas Chinese said, okay, well, I'm coming in, and I'm going to invest. And they did in huge droves. And then the West and the Europeans, the Americans, the Australians started to come in the mid-90s. And now look at China's the largest direct foreign investment country in the world. It has been for the past 2 years, and I think it will probably continue to be that way. So what you see there is that China can now compete with low-end manufacturing in Shenzhen. It can compete in Shanghai with high-end manufacturing cell phones. Quite sophisticated. It is not easy to make and produce and design a cell phone. Although it seems very easy, it is not. It is not. And Beijing is really manufacturing and doing much of the R&D now for cell phone and other types of advanced consumer technologies. Basically, countries thought that they could patiently export their way up the technology ladder in Asia, and basically they're finding that China's putting a stop right to that. So China is that Ross Perot's big sucking sound. It's not essentially, not just from, it's not just the Chinese selling into Mexico to get into the US market. It's the Chinese sucking the exports or the manufacturing capabilities and opportunities from other parts of Southeast Asia, bringing them into China. So China is that big sucking sound that Ross Perot was talking about. He was just perhaps a little bit misplaced in the region. The Middle Kingdom, it has now taken center stage, and India is just right behind it. And India is coming on very, very strongly. Next, here's my conclusion, basically. China is a competitor for India, but it's also an opportunity. And it's a very, very big opportunity for Indian companies. Now, no pyramid base can be bigger than combining India and China together. So when you look at the China market and you're talking to your executives and your CEOs, and they're saying, I must be in China, I must figure out how to sell to China. You must tell them now, you must figure out how to sell to China and India. Because I don't think that on the world stage you can talk about just China as a huge market. Because India has over 1 billion people, China has over 1 billion people. These will be the two largest economies on the face of the earth within the next 20 years, 20, 30 years. There's no doubt about it. Now, in the cell phone industry, China is the biggest market for cell phones in the world. India probably has about 5, 6, 7, 8 years to go, but it's because the adoption rate is so dramatic right now, because the cell phone is an important tool. Now, Indian companies, but they need to understand China better. I've come across very few Indian people who can speak a word of Chinese, unfortunately. Do you know that these are some of the most ancient countries in the world, India and China? China took Buddhism from India. Indian tea, Chinese tea, has been around for centuries. This is why the British went to war with the Chinese to try to open up China trade for all the raw materials, the spices, the tea. China and India have a lot to offer to the world if they are able and they're capable of understanding and utilizing these to help not just India, but to help the West. So I believe in helping both sides of the world. Basically, the Indians have to stop learning Chinese, and the Chinese have to stop learning Hindi or Indian. This is how these countries will become closer, because they're separated by a natural border right now. You know, you've got the Himalayas, they separate a lot of India and China. They've been fierce rivalries for a long time. So these two countries, they may seem similar, but they are very, very different. And the reality is, the past 50 years, it can't be overlooked. Communism in China and India's democracy. It can't be. It's night and day almost, actually. And one must consider this when the attitudes of the people, when you're dealing with both of these cultures. And the global smartphone revolution, it will amplify, and it's going to help bridge. As I say, it's going to be the bridge for the communications. The communications revolution, it will bridge India and China together. That's my presentation. Thank you.